Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a video for you answering a very simple question. What are your top 5 user knives? The knives that you'll reach for to use on a regular basis. And this topic was actually brought to mind by Professor EDC. He's one of actually very few people in the community making content in both English and Spanish, but his content's great and he's an interesting channel. You should definitely check him out. But anyways, and it is a tag video, and you know, what the heck not? Why not, right? So I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to tag Pete over at Cedric Canadian Gear and Outdoors, because I'm curious what his answers are going to be. Metal Complex. Hinderer. Oh, sorry, I got a bad Hinderer cough these days. I'm going to go ahead and tag Everyday City Carry, because Gary's there. Zach's stuff. Zach, I'm curious what he's carrying these days. And Mild Man at EDC, who's maybe a lesser-known channel, but quite good. But anyways, so let's go ahead and jump into my answers here. These are the 5 knives that I figured would be kind of the most used. This first one's kind of a strange choice, but it's actually very situational. This knife right here is a Sandrine Lanza, I believe is the technical term here. This is a tungsten carbide blade, polyhedral tungsten carbide. Very, very interesting piece. Very reflective blade, reflective enough to see your I Am Nick Shabazz t-shirt, available at nickshabazz.com/merch. But anyways, the reason this knife ends up getting used so damn much is because it lives right in our living room, right in sort of the landing area for the house, and it is very, very often the piece that my wife or myself will use to open just a random box at a moment when maybe I'm not carrying a knife. Maybe if I'm just in, pajamas first thing in the morning and I got to open something up, this might be the one I grab for it. It's a really great choice for that because this tungsten carbide just doesn't go dull, right? I've been using this and using this and using this and using this, and it's just still chugging along. Is it the piece I would carry on a regular basis? Maybe not necessarily. It's awfully wide, and frankly, for carry, I prefer its buddy, the Della Torre here, which is in many ways the same idea, just with a slightly more practical and more common blade shape. But anyways, that's a knife that ends up getting used a great deal in my life, mostly because of where it lives. Another one that's kind of in a similar situation is this guy. This is a Spyderco Gale Bradley Advocate, but more specifically, it is a modified one, such that the flipper tab has been removed from it. And the flipper tab was, well, it was one of the bigger pocket peggers out there in the world. This was actually sent to me by a wonderful viewer, but this is the knife that lives on my workbench, right? This is the knife that just sits kind of along with all of my other tools and just gets used in that kind of a context. Because there are going to be days that I'm working on something, but maybe I have something a little bit fancy. Maybe I have something that's really ill-fitted to the cutting job I need to do, and so this is the thing I will just grab and use to cut right there. And so as a result, no matter what I'm carrying on a given day, well, okay, not no matter what, but if I'm carrying some things that maybe aren't suited for the kind of cutting task I'm after, this ends up getting a lot of use just by virtue of living where it does. This is very much my sort of workbench knife, and I think it's really spectacular for that. And it's a really great knife, sort of generally speaking. This would be frankly, this would be a great just general carry piece, and I'm a very lucky man that I get to have this just kind of hanging around the house. Same thing there. Into a different category of use. There are days when I really want to cut. When I really want something that is going to be super duper slicey. Let's say I know I'm going to be cutting some closed cell foam, right? Like for instance, Kaizen foam or something like that. Or maybe I'm going to need to be making very, very thin slice. This is this is the TRM Neutron 2, and this is going to be my choice for those kinds of moments. When I'm really cutting, when I need to be cutting super thin, super slicey, this guy wins because it is really thin, it is really slicey, it is very ergonomic, it works really well, and so on days like that, this is a very easy choice to throw in the pocket. Luckily, I have a number of knives that could kind of fit that bill, but in terms of really super thin stock, in terms of really super thin grind, in terms of very nice blade steel, etc., the Neutron is definitely there, and so that kind of becomes my choice for slicing. That is one of the sliciest knives that I own. On the other side of things, if there's a day where I know I'm going to be beating things up a little bit, I'm really going to be, for instance, I want something that I don't need to worry about damaging, that's where this guy comes in. This is the Demco Knives AD20. This is a big old knife. This is huge, frankly, by my standards for the channel, but it has a nice big blade that has a grind that is thick enough to be able to withstand a little damage, but also is thin enough to still be able to cut. It is a very, very reliable lock with the shock lock on here. This is just a really nice piece. It's big, it's thick, it's beefy. There's really not a whole lot I can do to damage this knife. And so if I'm going to be, and by the way, I'm realizing now that I probably shouldn't have cleaned some of these up before I did this. Here are my spotless uses. But nonetheless, there is definitely that. And if I'm going to be doing something that borders on abusive, this is the one I'm going to choose just because it's really built to take that. Then finally, there is one knife that tends to just sneak into my pocket on days where I am sort of just puttering around the house. I may not be going anywhere, but maybe I'm going to be doing some work. I'm patching, drywall or something along that. Recently I was putting cables in behind the wall. And so as a result, I was cutting drywall. And so, I wanted something that is going to be reasonably dirty, but I don't mind if it gets beaten up too much. Or maybe something that, I want a little bit of cutting power, but nothing too crazy, slicey, delicate. And for that, I 100% chose this little guy right here. This is the Benchmade Barrage Z Hunter Edition. This was the knife that was, a knife that was given to me by my Patreon patrons, and it is completely and totally ridiculous. They went above and beyond to make sure that is the case, but the thing is, it is also quite a nice knife, right? Because a Tanto-style blade actually has some advantages for things like puncturing sort of cuts, like, for instance, into drywall or something like that. It has the ability to scrape a little bit, which is very nice. It is partially serrated, which, thanks, patrons. But it's also an M4 steel, which is a very tough steel. And it's a knife that I feel like I don't want to just have sort of languishing in my the knife box, but maybe I also don't want to be carrying in public. I don't know. But anyways, the thing is, this is actually a knife that gets a surprising amount of pocket time, especially on those kinds of days. It's to the point where it's almost a matter of tradition at this point in time. Like, oh, I'm doing something around the house, better go grab the Benchmade. And, then my wife comes around the corner and sees me with this in hand and just, judges me. But anyways, this is a very, very, frankly, it's a much nicer knife. It's a great joke and it's a great knife. Those two things are in nice harmony here. So this ends up being a user in my life, even if I don't want to admit that to myself. The Ermine Sting here, give it a little carry, but maybe not as much as some of the other ones. The funny thing, though, is when you're thinking about having a knife that is always in your pocket 24/7, that is something you're always reaching for when you're always doing work, is actually kind of a weird thing as a gear reviewer, right? Because at any given moment, I have 3 or 4 different pieces that I need to be carrying right now. And so very often what I'll be doing is carrying things that are for the channel, like, okay, for instance, today I've got the latest generation Booze Blade Smoke in my pocket, and, so a lot of days I'll find that I'm just grabbing whatever is around for review and sort of making it work. And so as a result, a lot of people say, oh, Nick, come on, you say you're a knife guy, but then I look at all your knives and they don't show any wear. Come on, what are you doing? Well, to be fair, I'm not super abusive to my gear, and I do tend to clean things up, removing, residues and things like that. But it's also the case that I have a lot of stuff that comes across my desk, and I have a lot of stuff in my own private collection. So the amount of wear on any one piece is generally pretty low. So as a result, these are the ones that I will very often end up using, sort of choosing over other kinds of things. The TRM Shadow is actually an honorable mention here. For a day when I want a fair amount of blade, but I don't need it to be quite as beefy and overbuilt, that might swap into this spot as well. But anyways, that's kind of where I stand with it. There is a bunch of stuff that sort of gets very light use by virtue of having a bunch of stuff around and by having a bunch of stuff to review. But if I need to grab something to use, these 5 are probably going to be the ones that win. And so, like I said, thank you very much, Professor, for a good tag. And again, Pete from Cedric Nader, Metal Complex, Everyday City Carry, Zach Stuff, and Mildman at EDC. Looking forward to hearing your responses. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.